I am Shailesh Adhikary. I am from surgery and I belong to Nepal. I have been working in treetop for the past 2 months and I am finding a wonderful atmosphere here to be able to serve the Maldivian population, and it's good to be in front of you. It's about a boy who was 7 years old. He was from the island, one of the islands in Maldives, and he had accidentally ingested the magnetic beads which was there at his house, and the magnetic beads were there in the house because his sister had to do some work with it for her school. He happened to ingest the magnetic beads incidentally. So since he ingested the magnetic beads, the parents got to know about that, and then the boy was brought to Treetop Hospital from the islands, and we did all the investigations like X-ray abdomen, the CT scan, the ultrasound, and then we happened to localize the site of the magnetic bead. Once we know the localization of the magnetic beads, and then we are able to decide whether the magnetic bead would pass naturally on its own, or we need to intervene by doing some sort of a surgery or some laparoscopy. At that point of time, when the patient was there in emergency, the boy did not have any issues relating to abdomen. He was not complaining of any pain or vomiting. He was not in obstruction. So whenever we find the foreign body ingested by some person, we need to see whether the abdomen is distended, some form of vomiting, we need to, on that ground, we need to decide whether the foreign body needs urgent removal or we can wait, because one of the tendencies is we can wait provided there are no symptoms on the patient's abdomen. So when we did the investigations, we came to know that the foreign body, the magnetic bead, was in the small intestine. So when the foreign body is in the small intestine, it usually could pass naturally towards different portions of the small bowel and then to the large bowel, and then it would come on, because the narrowest portion of the GI tract is there in the near the neck, in front of the neck. It's called cricopharyngeal sphincter. It's called cricopharynx. That's the narrowest portion of the GI tract. And when we in medical science, we tend to believe that if some foreign body goes through that narrowest portion, it usually could pass on its own, but there are times when it does not happen. So in this case, we wanted to wait for a few days. We wanted to wait for a couple of days because the parents were also not ready for the operation. They were not too keen for the operation. They just wanted to see whether that foreign body passes on its own, rather than we planning to operate and then removing it. So after waiting for a couple of days, when we did imaging again, we found that the foreign body had not progressed. It had been in the same location where it was before. So that's when we, along with the consent of the parents, the father, the mother, and then we in the team, me and Diego, another surgeon who is here from Argentina, we decided to go in. And then we did a laparoscopy first. We wanted to see whether we could identify the small bowel with the magnetic beads, and we could see that there were some dilated loops. And after making about 2 centimeter long incision, we opened the abdomen, and then we saw that the magnetic beads were about to perforate from one of the small intestine, which you can see in the images. And we found about 6 multiple perforations in the small bowel, and we call a mesentery. It's one of the organs which is attached to the abdominal cavity, and there were some perforations in the mesentery and the small bowel. So all in all, there were about 6 multiple perforations in the small bowel, as you can see in the diagram in the photos. And so we were able to remove all the foreign bodies. These were about 21 magnetic beads clumped together, which you can see here. So this is looking like a ring, but these are actually magnetic beads which could be separated. They were clumped to each other, and then they were lodged in the intestine. So this is how we could we could remove the foreign body from his bowel. So postoperatively, the boy did well. He found a little bit of a difficult course for a couple of days because of vomiting, but then again, with patience and with some antiemetics and ambulation, of course, he improved, and we could make him happier, and then we could send him home. So this is the story of a child with the magnetic beads. One of the messages through this case we want to give to the Maldivian population, and then every child in this planet Earth, is that when incidentally the magnetic beads, different sizes and shapes of magnetic beads, when it's ingested, when it goes into the bowel or the alimentary tract, we call it gastrointestinal tract, they tend to clump to each other. We know about the magnetic forces. They tend to clump to each other, and then it has some hazardous effect in the human body. So as soon as we find this type of thing, we need to operate rather than waiting for a long time, because waiting for a long time means anxiety in the healthcare provider's mind and also in the minds of the relatives. So as soon as we find this type of cases, we need to intervene early rather than to wait and to watch. And another important thing is, since the children, they have curiosity in our day-to-day lives, so they want to know, they want to try ingesting this type of things. Maybe in the Maldivian population, the community, the children have a tendency to know what it is like when they ingest a magnetic bead. So I think this is something which we need to discourage to our child. We need to be careful regarding the activities of the children in relation to the toys they have in forms of magnets, so that there is no this type of incidents in the future.